The British have entered Solomon's land. They will soon face Solomonic decisions between Jews and Arabs. At first they were celebrated from all sides as liberators and future winners. With their entry, the population of Jerusalem ends the bitter hardship, the bitter misery, and for the 40,000 Jews, the danger of expulsion. In all of Palestine, the British still find some 55,000 Jews, 30,000 fewer than in 1914 when war broke out. The British Commander-in-Chief General Allenby enters the Holy City in December 1917. Surrounded by the Allied officers of his unit, he strides through the line of Jerusalem's inhabitants, as the emissary of the Great War Coalition against the Turks, and as the embodiment of the Christian West. He brings new hope and a new era with the power of his weapons. But he doesn't feel himself a protector of Zionism, as his government has just recognized its claim to Palestine. General Allenby doesn't believe in the political future for the Jews in Palestine. While he proclaims the religious liberties and the protection of all the inhabitants of Jerusalem through his army, the Christian confessions prevail in the homages of the religious communities. The large number of Christian churches gives the impression of Christian preeminence, although Jews form the two-thirds majority in Jerusalem. The Jews, dressed up in their best European clothes and in step for the big symbolic reception, demonstrate their self-confidence and their hopes for recognition of their fundamental rights. After their sufferings under the Turkish war administration, they feel they are the legitimate allies of England. Their political leadership will present to the British their demands for self-government immediately after the festival. The liberators of Jerusalem know at this moment, as the banners with the Star of David greet them, that Colonel Lawrence is somewhere in the desert with Prince Faisal of Hijaz negotiating the borders of the Arab state, which England has promised. On this feast day, the Arabs parade with the flags of the Prophet to a counter-rally through the streets and on the Mount of Olives, to assert their rights to Jerusalem as the holy city of Islam. For them, Palestine is part of Syria and Arab land, in which the Jews can at best be tolerated as a minority. They opposed concessions to the Jews from the outset and sought British support. The German signposts, which have stopped, give direction to Allenby's army the direction. The Arab population builds for the British the road to Damascus. The British offensive is proceeding serenely, but British foreign policy is running out of time in the Middle East. And the road to Damascus is still a long one. If England's interests are to be safeguarded against her French rival and the promise made to the Arabs is to be kept, the British and their Arab allies must soon enter Syria. The troops of the Sheriff of Mecca are outside the Syrian capital. But the Arab promise of alliance is only partially fulfilled. The uprising in Syria against the Turks failed to materialize. Damascus is captured, but the Arab spears did not open the way to Syria for the British. Prince Faisal, son of the Sharif Hussein of Mecca, awaits Lawrence the British envoy before entering the city. Colonel Lawrence had enforced the participation of the Arabs in the war as an ally of England, and led the Arab guerrilla war behind Turkish lines. He is also committed to the Arab cause. Faisal and his horsemen come too late for the policy of the European powers. In order to assert the Arab claim, their military strength would have had to be stronger. Now there is little they can do in Damascus. A year later, however, in 1919, Arab resistance against the policies of England and France will take shape here. The Syrian National Congress will demand the independence of Syria, including Palestine, and will strongly contest the legitimacy of the Jewish homeland. The British Indian troops in Damascus will continue to move further north. The Arab troops of Faisal stay for a while, but later they are forced by the French to leave Damascus. Yet Faisal's journey to the Victoria Hotel is a symbolic walk. He will remain a stranger on the road in Damascus. Allenby has no mandate to give Syria to Faisal. The British cabinet is looking for a pretext to withdraw from the war agreement with the Arabs, so the general is instructed to play for time. The first published conception of a modern Arab state was written in Paris in 1905. The borders of this desired and autonomous Arab state were not clearly indicated. They should run either from the Tigris or the Euphrates to the Isthmus of Suez, from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. Some Arab countries were to remain outside this sphere. Among them is Egypt. The core of the empire was to be a large Syria. Lebanon was named as an autonomous region within this state. But there was no mention of Palestine. It was considered part of Syria. The borders of Palestine were not precisely determined. They ran east of the Jordan River in the desert. In the north, legally disputed region, somewhere between Haifa and Akkon. In the south, on the Sinai Peninsula, they were more clearly drawn. They included the Gaza Strip. In a letter McMahon wrote on October 25, 1925, to the Sheriff of Mecca Hussein, Britain agrees to recognize and support an independent Arab state within certain limits, assuming that Hussein's forces could conquer Syria. But the letter makes two conditions. First, that England could not dispose of territories that were in France's sphere of interest. Secondly, that parts of Syria that are not strictly Arab should be included, especially western districts of Damascus, Homs, Hama and Aleppo. To the west of these Syrian cities lie the today's Syrian coast, and Lebanon with Tripoli and Beirut, but not Palestine. The letter does not mention Palestine. To his Secretary of State, Edward Grey, McMahon reported it would have been a difficult task to draft a letter which, on one hand, was acceptable to the Arabs, but on the other hand would give His Majesty's government as free a hand as possible for the future. Later, England will declare that it also excluded Palestine from the promised Arab state. In the meantime, secret negotiations had taken place between London and Paris on a division of the future spoils of war in the Middle East. In a letter dated May 16, 1916, the British Foreign Minister confirmed the agreement to the French government. Grey wrote that Britain agreed to the plan, even though it would have to give up considerable interests. A secret map with the boundaries of the territorial division was attached. Four powers were then given spheres of influence on the territory of the former Turkish Empire. France receives the entire Levant coast north of Akkon and in addition a large piece of South Anatolia. England receives the core of the Mesopotamia, Tigris and Euphrates with Baghdad, the port of Basra, and the oil area to the northeast of Baghdad. Italy gets the largest part of southwest Turkey. Russia gets eastern Anatolia and Constantinople with the Bosporus. Two independent Arab states were to be created. A northern A state under French influence, which covers most of present-day Syria. A southern B state under English influence, which includes the western part of present-day Iraq and Jordan. The core area of Palestine was to be internationalized. Akkon Bay with Haifa as a British enclave. The result of the negotiation did not bring Faisal any closer to his goal. Although he has appointed a governor in the city, he cannot take possession of Syria. The inhabitants of Damascus are not united on his side either. The Arab Christians in particular fear the Islamic rule of the Sheriff of Mecca. Allenby turns back to his military duties. He must lead the war against Turkey to victory. London presses for a decision also for political reasons.